Thank you very much to all of you for helping out with us. I really appreciate it. Let's demonstrate some stuff on the drums for a second first. I'd like to just demonstrate to the class what we need to do with each part of the drum set a little bit. So, Tyler, appreciate your help. If you would demonstrate how you play the ride cymbal.
Sure. Yeah. So the ride cymbal is simple. You guys all know about song rhythms, right? Mm-hmm. So the basic ride pattern is 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3.
Let's just demonstrate just quarter notes for a minute. Okay. This quarter note thing is what drives the band, and the ride cymbal. And in the jazz band, we keep time on the cymbals. Mm-hmm. In the rock band, we keep time on the drums. But here we're keeping time on the cymbals. And so something to notice is that cymbals don't sound the same throughout. If you would start right on the edge and then work in. And even on the cone. Yeah. There's different sounds there. Different cymbals have the sweet spot in slightly different places. But I would say for most of them it's about 2.5 or 3 inches in. I don't know, where's this one? That looks like just about 3 inches. 2.5 to 3 inches. And if he goes out farther, there's too much of that. We don't get the ping. See, we need the ping. Show me the ping again. And if you go in too far, not terribly. If you go on the cone, then it's a lot stronger. Sometimes we play on the cone on purpose, like in a Latin thing or something. But basically, we're looking for that sweet spot that's in usually about this far or so, somewhere in there. And you have to kind of experiment just a little bit. But you want the place where you get good ping and not weird aftermath like we get out on the edge. Yeah. Now let's demonstrate the hi-hat. Now I can go all day at adjudicating at a jazz festival, and I can see that hi-hat going up and down, and I never hear one the whole day. To me, it's really important here, cutting through the band. And usually I have to have, if you're driving a full big band, I don't think that'd be enough. I would just give yourself a little more spread on the cymbals, so it's just a hair farther apart. And then you've got to show us the technique you're using with your foot. You kind of dance on the pedal here.
So, it's kind of hard to see here. My foot, the heel is always going up and down on every beat. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Can you see this at all?
I can come closer.
Yeah.
So, you can see.
Yeah, do it over here.
Over here?
Probably would work. Yeah.
Shows an ankle.
So it goes like that. On every beat.
Okay.
So just the heel. The toe stays flat. And then when you want to play the hi-hat, you kind of whip it up. And that gives it a nice crisp attack. If you just go, some old school drummers will go like this. That gets a really washy hi-hat sound, and especially in a big band.
I love that crisp.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, last week I adjudicated at the UVU Jazz Festival all day, and I was talking to hi-hat players all day about how they were moving their foot, because they were actually moving their whole leg going, from the knee. That's going to get old fast, right? Mm-hmm. Demonstrate what it looks like to do it from the knee, or what it sounds like.
Well, if you move just your whole leg up and down.
It's going to be hard to do this quick, and it's going to be hard to maintain this for very long. Do it the other way now. This is going to give us the really more crisp hi-hat that I'm looking for. Now, let's add that to the ride cymbal. Just quarters over here. Yeah, okay, great. What's the place of the bass drum in the big band?
In a big band, it's just to kind of accent the bass. You don't really hear it.
I had a kid last week that it was, Ed Shaughnessy called it gorilla foot. He was the drummer on the Tonight Show band. But just show us gorilla foot. Play those two things and then give us too much on the bass drum. This is going to sound a lot more like marching band than jazz band. So we don't want that on the bass drum. Now in a smaller group, we don't even play all those quarter notes on the bass drum typically. Most of the time, you just do what we call dropping a bomb now. Now you just bam for accent, emphasis here, emphasis there. It is not uncommon though in a big band to do what we call 4 on the floor. And 4 on the floor is when we do play all 4 quarter notes. Buddy Rich did this, Louis Bellson, a lot of the great old rudimental drummers did this. But they did what they called feathering the bass drum so that it's hardly even audible. Show us that. And maybe it's even a little less than that. And then when you get the bass going with it, why don't you just walk a line with it for a second. Yeah. You're not even going to notice the bass drum. Except when he does setups and smacks it, which happens, of course, when we do those bomb drops like I was talking about. But for basic playing, you might play on the 4 on the floor and feather the drum, but you're not going to really, it's not going to be noticeable that much. And this is a point to be made about the bass drum. Sometimes you'll see bass drums where we've taken off the head, stuffed a pillow in it, really tried to deaden it up. Well, what's that for?
It's to give a more punchy sound.
Because we want it to be that way in rock and roll. Yeah, we don't want that in the jazz band because we want it here. We want a sound in the bass drum that does complement the sound of the acoustic bass. Now, if we're doing a lot of slap and pop stuff on an electric bass, it's going to be nice to have that really, really crisp bass drum with it, see? And then, so it depends on the style, what you're really after, but generally in a school big band, I would just keep this kind of a setup. I wouldn't be taking off the head and I wouldn't be stuffing pillows and stuff, right? Okay. Now, what do you usually do on the snare drum, Tyler?
It's called comping. So, comping usually is just kind of adding to the flavor of the band, to the rhythm section.
And it should be coordinated with the comping that the piano is doing. Yeah, so this needs to be something where there's a lot of listening happening, and what you do on the snare drum, what you do on the piano should be complementary rhythmically, you see. And when we say comping, we use that word loosely. I know some people say complement. Well, okay, accompany. Comping is short for probably both things, but accompany, I think, is probably the best version of it. And so we set up the quarter notes here, and actually I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's come back to the snare drum. Let's do a snare drum. Okay. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a period in there where he was doing some predictable enough rhythms that Tyler grabbed onto it on the snare drum and he was doing it with the snare. This is what we were talking about a few minutes ago, that the snare and the piano need to be in cahoots here. We need to have some listening happening, and what happens rhythmically in the snare drum should be matching kind of what the piano player is doing rhythmically, and vice versa. You'd be listening to the snare drum, you know. Yeah. And that's where the comping happens. What Sam is doing right now is called comping. And what Tyler was doing on the snare drum is called comping, as he mentioned a while ago.